Shalom, good afternoon from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Galli, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in 1981 in New York State, now celebrating our 41st year. Today is Monday, December 19th, 2022, in the Gregorian calendar, and it is the 25th day of Kislev, the 9th Hebrew Israelite month, in the Hebrew Israelite year 5783, and it has also the first day of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to all our viewers and listeners. Welcome to episode 13 of our monthly Root and Branch Association Lost Tribes Fellowship Seminar, chaired by Mr. Yair Davidiy, who is chairman of the fellowship. Yair is a world-renowned expert on the subject of the lost 10 tribes of Israel, the author of many books, and then he's so prolific, I can't keep up with it, and articles and wonderful videos on his own YouTube channel and his website, a treasure trove of information. I wish I had more time to study it in depth. It's like he's a walking encyclopedia on the lost tribes.
This is Yair Davidiy.
Shalom.
Shalom. This is Yair Davidiy. I represent Brit-Am, Hebrew Awareness. We find the lost 10 tribes amongst Western nations. And that is what we do, that's what we concentrate upon, proving that where the lost 10 tribes are and spreading the message that the lost 10 tribes are in the areas where we find them, that is amongst Western peoples. And we do this from a Jewish perspective, but we also try and incorporate all points of view to make it open and acceptable to everyone, and also understandable to them. Because this is an important information that should be known, that needs to be known, and that can bring a lot of good to the world if it is presented properly and made acceptable, available to everyone. Loyal, can you mute the audience? Loyal, can you mute?
Yeah, yes, I did. I did.
Okay, we're ready. So now we're going to talk about the biblical aspects. We concentrate. We bring proofs. We have proofs from the Bible. We have proofs from rabbinical sources. We have proofs from archaeology, linguistics, mythology, from numerous fields of study that all together help us prove that lost in tribes amongst Western peoples. And all of the different fields of evidence come together. They build up a composite picture that with each part interlocking with the other, reinforcing the other, and shedding light on the other. And the whole structure, the whole edifice is quite impressive, quite convincing, and it is the truth. It reflects the truth. One of our most important points, possibly the most important point, is the Bible. And from the Bible we find blessings that it was prophesied that the lost 10 tribes would be blessed, that there would certain blessings would accrue to them, and only to them, or to them more than to any other entity. And by showing where these blessings have come into play, where they are today, and showing that they are amongst peoples whom we identify as belong to lost 10 tribes, this is evidence. Now, this is what we're going to talk about in this present talk. Those who have been following us over a period of time and heard previous talks or read articles in our literature will find some of the material familiar, but there's also new points, additional points, and it should be worthwhile the while of everyone to listen to us on this matter. Now, Abraham was the first Hebrew. Abraham begat Isaac begat Yaakov. Yaakov was renamed Israel. They were the forefathers of the Israelite nation of the Hebrew people. Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. Jacob. Jacob was renamed Israel. Jacob gave rise to 12 sons, and these became the forefathers of the 12 tribes of Israel. And from the very beginning, Abraham was chosen to start a nation, to start a nation of its own that who would carry forward the will of the Almighty, spread the will of the Almighty in the world, and also be blessed, receive blessings. And these blessings were to be at least in part a tool, a means by where the task that the chosen people would have would be able to fulfill what they were chosen for. Abraham was blessed that he would become a great nation, and in you will all the families of the earth be blessed. All the families of the earth were to be blessed in Abraham. That is a blessing. Genesis 12, 2-3. All the families of the earth would be blessed in Abraham. It also says in Genesis 17:2, I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly. And again, I will make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you, and I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto you and to your seed after you. This is Genesis 17:6-7. So that was a blessing given to Abraham, and we'll go into this a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. Abraham begat Isaac and also Ishmael. Abraham begat Ishmael. Ishmael was the son of his handmaiden, the son of Hagar, the handmaiden of his wife Sarah. Ishmael was the son of Hagar, the handmaiden of Sarah. Ishmael traditionally was the forefather of many of the Arab peoples and other nations. And symbolically, Ishmael represents the forces of Islam. And out of Ishmael came many of the Arab and Muslim peoples, and it was prophesied that Ishmael would become a great and powerful nation. But also says, my covenant will I establish with Isaac. The preeminence of Isaac was emphasized. See Genesis 17:21. Also Genesis 17:19, I will establish my covenant with him, that is with Isaac, for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And also Genesis 21:21, in Isaac shall your seed be called. Isaac begat twins, Esau and Jacob. Esau is pronounced in Hebrew as Esau, and Jacob is Jacob. Jacob was renamed Israel. Concerning Esau, it was foretold, by your sword you shall live and you shall serve your brother. Genesis 27:14. Esau became the ancestor of peoples amongst the early Romans, part of the German peoples, part of the ruling elites in Europe, also in Russia, China, Japan. They all had input from Esau. That is, their ruling bodies and their elite forces were in part derived from Esau, whereas most of their population was not. But it also means that at certain times, certain stages in history, Esau would take over. Esau would assert its predominance, and the nations in question can be identified for those periods of time with Esau. Esau is also known as Edom. And Esau was the firstborn, technically speaking. They were twins, but Esau came out first, technically speaking. He was the first. He believed that he should receive the right of the firstborn and receive a blessing, and Jacob took it from him by disguising himself as him, by addressing himself as Esau. Jacob took the blessing. Consequently, Esau planned to kill him. It says in Genesis 27:41, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. He hated Jacob. He plotted to kill him. And ever since, descendants of Esau on and off have planned and attempted to wipe out that portion of the Israelite nation who is identifiable, that is the Jewish people, as we shall explain shortly. And the many anti-Semites, many haters of the Jews, are apparently descended from Esau. That is why they are obsessed with the Jewish people, obsessed and jealous of them and imitate them and want to harm them. And we also find descendant people like this amongst the so-called identity groups. These identity groups, like us, they identify the lost 10 tribes with peoples amongst in a Western origin. But they say that the Jews are imposters, or they say other things. And if you look into what they are saying, these people are reprobates, they are lowlifes, and they are also traitors to their own Western ancestors, if to the degree that they really did have Western ancestors. So that's another point worth, we can deal with it at another point, at another time, but it's worth noting that these elements are no good, and they harm us, and they harm everyone who comes in contact with them. Getting back to what we're speaking of, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the forefathers of the Israelite nation. Jacob received the blessings promised to Abraham and Isaac. The children of Jacob were to become the chosen people. Isaac blessed Jacob. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be a multitude of people, of peoples, in the plural in the Hebrew it says, a multitude of peoples, different peoples existing alongside each other. And give you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your seed with you, Genesis 28, 2-3. Also Jacob was told in Genesis 32:8, your name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince have you power with God, and with men have prevailed. So too, in Genesis 35:10, your name is Jacob, your name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. And he called his name Israel. Jacob, that is Israel, had 12 sons. Now the sons of Jacob were 12, Genesis 36:22. 12 sons of Israel were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. All the sons of Israel received a blessing from their father. Everyone according to his blessing he blessed them. See Genesis 49:28. That is, each and every tribe received his own blessing, his own blessing suited to its own innate tribal character. Each tribe is different. Each tribe received its own blessing. Each tribe has its own task in the world to fulfill. Both as individual tribes and also as part of the whole of the Israelite body. In addition to this individual blessing given to each and every tribe, there's also the natural right of leadership and the birthright. The natural right of leadership involves Judah. One of the tribes, Judah, provide the house of David, from whom will come the future Messiah. And the birthright meant something different. It meant more the reception of the blessings given to all of the tribes, but in a greater quantity, and enjoying an overall directional position, one could say. And that right came to Joseph. 1 Chronicles 5, chapter verses 1-2, more or less sums up the whole story. It says in 1 Chronicles 5, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, he was indeed the firstborn. Reuben was the natural, physically, the firstborn of the Israelite tribes. But because he defiled his father's bed, he acted improperly with the concubine of his father. His birthright was given to the sons of Joseph. But nevertheless, even though Reuben had the birthright taken away from him, his name is frequently mentioned in the Bible as the firstborn. Whenever quite often, in more than half the number of times when the name Reuben is mentioned, it says firstborn. As if he still had the attributes, he still has something of the characteristics of a firstborn son. And we find descendants of Reuben to be predominant amongst the French people, or amongst a portion of the French people and other European entities. And they were quite important in the history of the Israelite nations. At all events, his birthright was taken from him, was taken from Reuben, and was given to Joseph. His birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. So that the genealogy is not listed according to the birthright, but is given to Joseph. Joseph is the firstborn, has the right of the firstborn. But even so, it continues in verse 2, yet Judah, that is the Jewish people, prevailed over his brothers, and from him came a ruler. Future Messiah will come from Judah, although the birthright was Joseph. So we have these different elements within the Israelite nation, different forces, different loci of power and of influence, and each one has their role to play. Jacob blessed Joseph. The blessings of your father prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors, some who gave rise to me, my ancestors, unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hill. So he should be on the head of Joseph, on the crown of him that was separated from his brethren. So Genesis 49:6. So we have here that Joseph, beyond being one of the tribes, one out of 12, he is something beyond them, a general body in his own right, an umbrella, one could say, for the others to shelter underneath. And this idea is mentioned by rabbinical commentators. One of them was Rabbi Yishayahu ben Avraham Alevi Horowitz, 1555 to 1630. He was an important rabbi. He wrote a book, Shnei Lukot Brit. He also, incidentally, was an ancestor of Rabbi Zadok of Lublin, who in previous talks also whom we have quoted from in previous talks, and he said also gave important insights concerning Joseph, concerning the Messiah, son of Joseph, and concerning lost 10 tribes. At all events, he too explains the overall umbrella position of Joseph. Joseph is, if to say, above the others, but at the same time as being part of them. He says Joseph has an aspect of Jacob above the other tribes. Is Joseph and his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So all of the sons were descended from Jacob, but Joseph especially fulfilled the task, the embodiment of Jacob. So we have this link between Joseph and Jacob. And Joseph had 2 sons. The 2 sons of Joseph were Ephraim and Manasseh. Both Ephraim and Manasseh received the rights of the status, 4 tribes in their own right. So you had 12 tribes. One of the tribes is Joseph. Joseph begat 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Each of those tribes became 2 tribes in their own right, instead of the whole tribe of Joseph. Therefore, technically, you had 13 tribes. 13 tribes. But the Bible, whenever it lists the tribes, it maintains a quorum of 12. Either by counting Ephraim and Manasseh as the 1 tribe of Joseph, or counting them as separate tribes and counting Levi, and that is not counting Levi at all, because Levi was to be scattered amongst the other tribes. So in many cases he is included amongst the other tribes, the blessings of the other tribes, and is not always needed to record his name as a separate entity. At all events, Jacob said, your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. See Genesis 48, verse 5. That is, they should be counted as tribes amongst the brothers of Joseph. Jacob blessed Ephraim and Manasseh, the angel which redeemed me from all evil. The angel which redeemed me from all evil. Bless the lads, and let my name be named on them. The name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac. And let them grow into multitude in the midst of the earth. And this is a blessing. This is a blessing that religious Jews often bless their children with, sometimes once a year, so that Rosh Hashanah or before Yom Kippurim. Some do it once a week at Shabbat. It is a blessing which is frequently used, and a powerful blessing. And this is a blessing that was given to Ephraim and Manasseh. And it is to be found in Genesis 48:16. We have a repetition of this blessing, or along another formulation of Genesis 48:20. And he blessed on that day, saying, "In you shall Israel bless, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh." And he said Ephraim before Manasseh. And the prevalence of Ephraim is repeated in Jeremiah 31:9. I am a father to Israel and Ephraim. Ephraim is my firstborn. Jeremiah 31:9. I am a father to Israel and Ephraim is my firstborn. And nevertheless, towards the end times, there would be a stage, as we shall show, when Manasseh would be preeminent. At all events, these blessings were concomitant. They came together with a divine purpose. It wasn't a free gift, as if to say. They had to work for it. And each section had to work for it in a different way. But when it was the blessings were giving, see Genesis chapter 18 to 19, it says, Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his house after him, shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. Task of performing justice and judgment was to come into effect after they become a great and mighty nation. That's what it says. If you look at the verses, that's what it says. It goes in order. Become a great and mighty nation and perform justice and judgment. And these people whom we identify as being descended from the lost tribes, from the tribes of Israel, especially the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim, Manasseh, they have benefited the world in a great many ways. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, in effect, especially even in recent times, after the Green Revolution, hundreds of millions of people, like a good portion of the whole world population in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, they are alive because of America, because of American investment in crops that are resistant to pests, crops that are resistant to drought, crops that give fruit bountifully despite problems. And that is just in the recent times. Before then, many of these peoples were killing each other, massacring each other, enslaving each other. And it was these peoples who eliminated slavery. The British stopped international trade in slavery, and they also, with a major force, putting slavery down in Africa. It never entirely disappeared, but it virtually did so at several stages, mainly due to British efforts. And even now, America is the only, America has taken over from Britain, replaced their Britain, they eclipsed eclipsed each other. They've had a transfer of tasks to fulfill, one could say. But Britain is still active, and America is the do-gooding, the policeman of the globe today, like Britain was in the past. And this was prophesied that was what the Israelites would be. That is a task they had to fulfill, and that is the task that was given unto them. Also, they are associated with the 10 tribes. For those few of you are not certain what I mean by the 10 tribes, just to remind you, there were 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel, and they came out, they were in Egypt, they were enslaved in Egypt, they came out of Egypt and went through the wilderness. In the wilderness, they received the Torah. Then under Joshua, they conquered the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, and they divided amongst the different tribes. The different tribes were in the land. Eventually, they said they had a king, King Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. King Saul was replaced by King David, who wrote the book of Psalms. After King David came King Solomon, in whose reign the temple was built, the temple in Jerusalem. After Solomon came Rehoboam, in English translation. Rehoboam was the king. In his reign, 10 of the tribes rebelled. They were dissatisfied with the arrangements of taxation. They, in effect, said no taxation without representation, like the American Revolution. And they separated from Judah. Judah was centered around Jerusalem. Judah remained in that area, together with the tribe of Benjamin, and later with most of the tribe of Levi, who also came into the area of Judah, and with representative minorities from all of the other tribes, but centered on the tribe of Judah itself. Whereas the 10 tribes were in the north and they had a separate kingdom. And they continued that way for about 300 years, separate entities. Sometimes they fought against each other. Sometimes they cooperated with each other. Sometimes they helped each other. Sometimes they helped their enemies against each other. They were a family. They had family quarrels, one could say. Eventually, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, were conquered by the Assyrians, taken into exile, taken to areas north of them, areas of the Assyrian Empire. Some were taken overseas, settled in areas of Western Europe through boats, through being transported by boats. Others were taken overseas to areas in the north, on the northern Syria, Iran, Caucasus region. From there they moved to the north, they moved into Russia, they moved into Eastern Europe, and from there they moved to the west. And the different groups eventually all converged in the west. They all came together over the course of a few centuries. They all met up, one could say, and re-emerged, coalesced again as tribal entities. And they are the 10 tribes, and on the way they had forgotten who they were. Even before they were exiled, they had began to forget who they were. You see, in 2 Kings 17, it describes why they were exiled. It describes them as going in the ways of the nations around them, intermixing with the peoples around them, marrying them, adopting their customs, worshipping their gods, ceasing to keep the covenant of circumcision, and so on, and in effect becoming pagans whilst they were still here, before they were exiled. And then, while they were exiled, they were split up, divided, demoralized, and there were forces applied to them so that they quickly assimilated the peoples around them and forgot where they came from, as did every other Asian people who ever existed, apart from the Jews, or apart from peoples who remained in their areas without being moved from them. So this is what we had. And so the 10 tribes forgot who they were, and they were not recognized by others and not recognized by themselves, and do not know who they are. But according to the Bible, they have a mission in the world history. They had a mission to fulfill. They had something to do. And the different sources say that this was from God. This whole thing was from God. It was the one purpose behind it, that the 10 tribes should forget who they were. Rabbi Moshe David Valley speaks on this. They would forget who they were. Ephraim would forget who he was, in order to fulfill the task that he had to fulfill. And once he has fulfilled that task, then will come the time that we are getting close to, when he will once again be made known unto him who he is, and return to become Israelite, who is self-aware of who he is. So this is what we have. We should note that even despite all of their moral perversities and degenerations and degradations, compared with pagan, Gentile, non-Israelite nations, they were considered relatively merit-worthy, where they were described as merciful kings. We have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings, said servants of the king of Assyria. In 1 Kings 20:31, they were fighting against the Israelites, and then they advised the leader to surrender to the Israelites, because we have heard the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings. They were known, compared to non-Israelite peoples, to be merciful. Also, the prophet Amos condemns both Judah and the 10 tribes. The prophet Amos, and we see the same message given here. Prophet Amos condemned Judah for not keeping the law. He said, Amos 2, verse 4 onwards, "For thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions, 3 sins of Judah, and for 4 I will not turn away its punishment, because they have despised the law of the Lord, and not kept his commandments. Their lies led them astray, lies which their fathers swallowed. But I will send a fire upon Judah, and shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem." That is what Amos says. And then he continues, "Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel," and for 4. Israel here means the 10 tribes. Usually in the 10 tribes we have Judah and The name is juxtaposed in the same context. Israel is referring to the 10 tribes, Judah to the Jews. So it says, for 2 transgressions of Israel, that is for the 10 tribes, and for 4, I'll not turn away his punishment, because they sell righteous for silver, and the poor for a pair of sandals. They pant after the dust of the earth, which is on the head of the poor, and pervert the way of the humble. So Rabbi Naphtali Zvi Yehuda Berlin, known as Naziv, 1816 to 1893, Rabbi, a great rabbi. Nearly every rabbi we quote is a great rabbi, because that is true. It so happens that great rabbis spoke on this matter. They were interested in it. And they said had original insights concerning it. And that is a source that a lot of people, most people are not aware of, have not looked into. But it says like lying there. Here, there are books, thousands of books, and you just have to open up the books and read them. And you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be some who knows who. Just read it according to Hebrew, and or sometimes even in English translations. And the message is there, black on white in a lot of cases. It's all there, as we were saying. And Nasim says on this message from Amos, he says that why in this message, it begins with the condemnation of Judah for not keeping the law, and then a condemnation for Israel, that is the 10 tribes, for oppressing the poor people, and for not doing social justice. Because why? Because Amos says because each one had sinned in what he was supposed to be a specialist in. Judah was supposed to keep the law and to be big in the law, and he is mentioned together with the law in biblical passages, whereas the 10 tribes were supposed to do goodness, Melchizedek, to be kindness, kind kings, social justice. So that was what they were supposed to be big in, and that is what they failed in at this stage, and they were being punished for it. And this too, we find in Amos later in chapter 6, verse 15, concerning the 10 tribes in the places of exile. He refers to them as Joseph. Very often, all of the 10 tribes are referred to as Joseph. Sometimes they're referred to as Ephraim. It depends on the context. To say according to the context, sometimes Ephraim means the tribe of Ephraim. In other cases, it means the whole of the 10 tribes altogether. The same with the term Joseph. Amos 6:15 says, hate the evil and love the good, and establish judgment in the gate. Hate the evil and love the good, and establish judgment in the gate. And maybe the Lord God of hosts will be gracious unto the remnant of Joseph. Joseph is connected with this, of doing justice, judgment in the gate, in public, and everywhere they go, of hating the evil and loving the good. And this is what they are supposed to do, and this is their clue to what can help them, help save them and redeem them. We saw that the blessing of Abraham involved becoming a great and mighty nation, in which all the nations of the earth would be blessed, and which would do justice and judgment. Genesis 18, verses 18 to 19. Becoming mighty was a prerequisite, was a precondition to becoming a blessing to other nations and doing justice. The use of force and the possession of it means enabling its use if needed, where necessary, to become a civilizing influence. This is what they had to do. This is what they did do. So since the quality of social justice and mercy was special to northern Israel, so too does it follow that necessity might, the means, and greatness be theirs, because they were needed to carry out their task. The 10 tribes often referred to collectively as Joseph or Ephraim. Joseph, the historical Joseph, he'd been sold as a slave. His father favored him, gave him a cloak of many colors, actually. Could not pass him in Hebrew, according to the different commentators, or most of the commentators. It means some type of tartan design. And actually, according to the Naziv, all the brothers had such cloaks, but Joseph was special. We also find this cotton passing being worn by Tamar, the daughter of David. It was a sign of royalty, of rank. And so when Joseph received this special coat from his father, it was as if his father was favoring him and pointing him out, already setting him on the track to become the ruler over his brothers. And then he had dreams about them bowing down to him, obeying him, making obeisance to him. And that got them even more rankled. And not only that, he took Brit-Am. He took an evil report to his father. Actually, then in Hebrew, it connotes a false report. And the sages explained that he misunderstood what was going on. He thought they had done things that were wrong, and he was mistaken. Therefore, their report was an evil one. It was a bad one. It was factually incorrect. He thought it wasn't, but it was, and he brought this report to their father, and they hated him even more, and we can understand them, and he was actually putting them in danger. They had wives, children, and it was a savage environment. People were killing each other. Nations around them wanted to wipe them out because they had wiped out one of their own cities. They were in danger, and they would have trouble existing on their own. And they needed to be together, and they needed to be assured that their father would give them a blessing and enable them to continue. And Joseph was putting this in jeopardy, so they decided to kill him. And they grabbed him and they threw him in a pit. And then they sold him to a caravan of Arab types, Midianites and Ishmaelites going down to Egypt. And they took him down to Egypt, and he sold in Egypt. And in Egypt, it was on the estate of Potiphar, and the wife of Potiphar put her eyes on him. He was good looking and he had a good body. That's what the Bible says. It's not something that I am modernizing or the situation. That's what the Bible says. He was good looking and comely of form, a good body, good face, good body, and he's young. And the wife of his master wanted him to have intercourse with her, and he refused. And he had to come in the house, go in and out of the house, because his master gave him the run of the house. So one time she grabs him and Morris almost pulls him onto her. So he leaves the cloak in her hand and runs out. So she's left there with a coat, and then she calls the rest of her members of the household, the servants and so on, and said, look at this, the Hebrew servant brought this Hebrew servant here to molest me. And when I shouted, he ran away. And then she told the same thing to her husband, and her husband was an official of the king, and I put him in a special jail. And in jail, he became the head of the jail. He had this habit, this quality. He was a good management. He was, wherever he was, no matter how low, he's the type of person who lands on his feet and became the manager of the jail. The children, all the rest of the prisoners were put in his charge. So one day he comes to do his rounds, and he finds two of the king's servants, the baker and the butler, and the winemaker, the wine manager, were both in jail, and they both had dreams, and they were upset, they were perturbed because they didn't understand what the dreams meant. So Joseph explained the dreams to them. He told that one of them would be executed, the other one would be restored to his post. And he asked that one, that is the wine manager, to remember him when that happens. He didn't remember him until later. At all events, eventually this led to Joseph becoming acquainted with the Pharaoh, introduced to the Pharaoh, and then becoming overlord of all the land of Egypt. And he stored up grain. He provided for the Egypt for victuals and provisions over the coming famine that Pharaoh himself had foreseen, had dreamt about, had not understood what he was dreaming about. And Joseph also fed the Egyptians, and he fed the people around them who were coming in from outside to buy grain, and he reformed the Egyptian government, the Egyptian social system. And he did quite a lot. That's what he was doing. He was known as the man, the lord of the country. That was, his brothers met him and didn't know who he was, but they described him as the man, the lord of the country. He was the man. He was the lord of the country. Genesis 42:33. And eventually he became reconciled to his brothers. And they made friends, one could say. They made it up. And because of him, all the rest of the Israelites came down into Egypt, and they settled there, and they remained there for 400 years or 210 years. It depends on how you understand the verses. And eventually they were oppressed, and under Moses they came out of Egypt. All events, Joseph was there. The thing about Joseph is that Joseph, when we meet Joseph, that is what he is. He is a person who is born to greatness. He is aristocratic, and they don't like him because of it. They're jealous because of it. But he gets ahead, he gets there. And he provides victuals for everyone. He sustains others, and he reforms everyone else. He manages other people, and he does that to the whole country and the whole world. And this is the task of his descendants, to some degree, but also do the same. We identify the sense of Joseph with the English-speaking peoples, the British Empire, and then the USA, have fulfilled the task of Joseph in the world, and they still are doing it to some degree. And they are the only ones who are doing it. Eventually, but whilst they're doing it, even though they're descended from Israelites, they're descended of Israelites physically, they're descended from Israelites. All a good portion of them are descended from Israelites. According to the Talmud and also the Bible, hints in the Bible, their membership of the Israelite nation has been suspended. They're Gentiles to all extents and purposes. They are not obligated to keep the law at this stage. In the future they will be, but at present they are not. They have a different task, a different goal to fulfill, a different measure of behavior is required of them. And Jeremiah also hints at this. He says, backsliding Israel is the 10 tribes that committed adultery. I had put away and given her a bill of divorce. Cut off, cast out. It also says, you are not my people, I will not be your God. In Hosea 1:9. You are not my people, none will not be my God. That is the task or the status of the Israelite nations in the place of exile. In the future this will change. In the place where it said unto them, you are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, you are the sons of the living God. See Hosea 1:10. But we have not reached that stage yet. At the moment, we are fulfilling a task of letting them know who they are. And another point we should mention is that Joseph may have had other sons in addition to Ephraim and Manasseh. When Jacob blessed Joseph and he said, your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. And your offspring, which you beget after them, shall be yours, and shall be called after the name of their brothers and their inheritance. In other words, Ephraim and Manasseh would be the forefathers of separate tribes, each in his own right. Other sons that would be born to Joseph would belong to either Ephraim or Manasseh. So it stands to reason that Joseph had other sons who were absorbed amongst Ephraim and Manasseh. So Rashi does not accept that. Rashi was the foremost commentator in the medieval times. He's a great commentator, but on this matter, he does not accept that Joseph had other sons, and Ephraim and Manasseh were the only sons of Joseph. Whereas other commentators do say that he does, and it sounds like he did. Nachmanides, Ibn Ezra, and it stands to reason that he did have other sons. We find other sons of Joseph or other entities pertaining to Joseph in the book of Chronicles and elsewhere in the Bible. And it could be that these extraneous entities are from the other sons of Joseph who've been added on to either Ephraim and Manasseh, especially Manasseh. And we also find elements from the tribe of Asher attaching themselves to Manasseh, even in biblical times, and other tribes as well. So this also has implications concerning the present identification of Manasseh and of the USA and of related peoples. Ephraim was younger than Manasseh, yet he received a greater blessing than Manasseh. Jacob blessed Manasseh and Ephraim. Jacob blessed Ephraim and Manasseh. He says, He says, Genesis 48:16, the angel which redeemed me from all evil. Bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac. And let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Also again, Genesis 48:20. And he blessed them that day, and saying, and you shall yourself bless, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he said, Ephraim before Manasseh. So Ephraim was set before Manasseh, and there literally it's meant that Ephraim was to become a great nation before Manasseh. It also implies that Manasseh would emerge from Ephraim. That is what we find. We find that Ephraim is to be identified with the English-speaking peoples, with the British, and Manasseh more with America, and the founding elements of America did come from Britain, did come out of Britain, but they were different. Sociological studies indicate that even before they came to America, they were somehow either different, they had different characteristics, and they were as if they moved out en masse on whole groups, and they went to America. And they founded the American state, which embodies Manasseh. Also in other parts of Europe, a similar phenomenon happened. Whole groups of people got up and left and came to America. You have two, and it's often due to economic reasons, but not always. And you have the phenomenon, you have two villages, one beside each other. All the people from one village get up and leave, as if the devil is chasing them, the difference, as if there was no tomorrow. Where's the rest? And then the neighbouring village, they all stay there. And indications are that those who left were different, had different origins from those who remained behind. So that is what we have. The prevalence, the predominance of Ephraim is repeated in Jeremiah 31:9. I'm a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Another point is the blessings were unconditional. The blessings were unconditional, as we shall see. We shall see this a bit in more depth later, but also we should note that the Almighty said, by myself I have sworn, says the Lord, that in blessing I'll bless you, and in multiplying I'll multiply your seed. Genesis 28:15. God is not a man, nor the son of man, that he should repent. He hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it. See Numbers 23:19-20. Abraham had been promised to become a great nation, an exceedingly populous one, many people. Kings of peoples would come out of them as leaders of several peoples, existing parallel to each other. All peoples who live would be blessing him. Receiving the blessing was both a reward and prerequisite to fulfill their task. And then Abraham would need to become a great and mighty nation in order to be a blessing to other peoples. As of a reward for doing what he had to do, he then received further blessings of the same kind. And ultimately these blessings were given unconditionally, but at first that was not the case. Abraham had been promised that he would receive the land of Canaan. He was promised to receive the land of Canaan. This, however, was conditional on belief in God, on circumcision, and of keeping the law. First, Abraham was called Abram. Later his name was changed to Abraham. See Genesis 12. The Lord said to Abraham, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to a land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you. And the ones who curse you I will curse, and in you will all families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham was promised to become a great nation, a source of blessing to others. And the land of Canaan was also promised to him. Genesis 12, it says, 7, the Lord appeared to Abraham, his name was, said, to your descendants I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. His promise was repeated. And added to enormous number, having an enormous number of physical descendants. Genesis 13, the Lord said to Abraham, after the Lord had separated from him, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For the land which you see, I will give it to you unto your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. Arise, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you. And then again of chapter 15, they took him outside and said, now look towards the heavens and count the stars. If you're able to count them, and he said to him, so shall your descendants be. And it follows the dialogue, give and take between Abraham and the Almighty. Then he falls asleep and has a vision. And this vision symbolizes the subjugation of Israelites in Egypt. And after that, other exiles would take place. And then again, the land is mentioned. The promise of inheriting the land is repeated again and again, but is separately from that concerning an exceedingly great number of descendants. Genesis 15 says that the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I will give this land from the river of Egypt as far as the great river. The river Euphrates, the Canaanite and the Kenizzite and the Cadmonite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Rephaim and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Girgashi and the Jebusite. Now originally the land promised to Abraham was to stretch from the Nile to the Euphrates and beyond. And there are 10 nations mentioned here. They were to drive out the Canaanite nations. Actually, according to the book of Genesis 10, there were 12 Canaanite nations. But apparently 2 of them were somewhere else, and 10 were in the land, in the promised land. The promised land. From the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, the Canaanite and the Kenizzite and the Cadmonite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Rephaim and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Girgashite and the Jebusite. These are 10 Canaanite nations. But later we find that when they did come into the land after passing through Egypt, after passing through the wilderness and receiving the Torah and coming to the land and conquering it, there were only 7 nations, 7 Canaanite nations. So what happened to the 3 others? See in Deuteronomy 7. Deuteronomy 7. 1. When the Lord your God brings you into the land, we are to enter in to take possession of it, and he drives away many nations from before you. The Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And it does not mention the Canaanites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites. And according to tradition, they will come to the children of Israel in the end times. The 3 extra nations will come to the children of Israel in the end times. So where are these people? So historically, they were to the north, they were to the east and to the west, and they moved out. And in the future, the places where they moved to will come to them in the course of history. And there was a Rabbi Moses Schreiber, 1762-1839, known as the Hasam Sofer. He was considered inspired. He was considered the greatest legal authority in his time. It was as if whatever he said was valid, as if it was a living Torah. And this is not something that I am saying. I am quoting from an article about him in the bit on the internet from ultra-Orthodox circles. And that is how they describe him. And he said, it seems to me, may Hashem expand our border quickly in our days, for then all the islands that in the Great Sea opposite the land of Israel to the western limit of the Oceanus, that is the Atlantic Ocean, all of it shall belong to the land of Israel. And they study the source in the Talmud and the Tosafot, where again says Rabbi Yehuda, all this is part of the lands given to the 10 peoples, the 10 tribes. And it also says from Levushe Mordecai, quoting on this opinion of the Hatam Sofer, I heard from my rabbi and teacher, the Hatam Sofer who heard from the holy mouth of our teacher, the Hatam Sofer, concerning the borders of the land of Israel in the future. The country of England belongs to the islands of the Holy Land. Does no one say in Midrashim that Jerusalem is destined to expand like the whole of the land of Israel now? The land of Israel shall increase in size greatly. In other words, the area of England and the area of Western Europe, parts of Western Europe, in the future will belong to Israel. And when these nations, and we have shown that this is where it was prophesied the nation, Western tribes would settle in, and they have settled there. And as if they now belong to Israel, but when it's been known unto them, when they realize, take cognizance, internalize that they belong to the tribes of Israel, it will be considered as if the land of Israel is part of them, as if they are part of the land of Israel. And that is worth taking into account, considering. I just give a small anecdote to getting a bit heavy here. We're talking about serious things. A small anecdote as to how this information came into our possession. I saw a book on the land concerning snippets, concerning extracts from different works regarding the land of Israel. They were selling it. They weren't selling it in a regular bookshop. They were selling it at the back of a synagogue, as they do sell books of a certain type, in the back of a synagogue. And I bought the book on an impulse, and I found this extract in Hebrew that I've just read out to you in the book. But it seemed, I was shocked by it, and it seemed far-fetched. I didn't want to put it out without finding an additional source. So I looked for the additional source, and I couldn't trace it up. And for some reason also I couldn't trace up the author. So I mentioned it to people on my email list, who I correspond with frequently. There's a few hundred of them, several hundred of them, and send out newsletters to them. And I said, this is interesting. We have to get additional authority, additional confirmation. And I tried to do some effort, made a few small efforts, and nothing came out of it, so I put it aside. And then Mark Williams lives in England, I believe. Mark Williams is a correspondent of ours, and he often sends us links to sources of information, asks us questions, gives us information. We have several people like that, and they help us. So Mark Williams kept on pestering me about it. Check it out. The person who wrote the book is still alive. They're still around. Check it out. Find out. It's important information. And that's what he was doing. Eventually, and then I moved. I was in Jerusalem. Then I moved to Beit-Am. In Beit-Am, they had a library, a Torah library. Also, there were programmers, computer programmers with Hebrew text in them, and I looked it up, and I couldn't find anything. And then eventually I did find something, and I found this source quoted from the Lewisham Mordecai in the name of the Hatam Sofer, and it wasn't there. It wasn't there. So I thought it was one of those things. The person who wrote it down either made a mistake and copied it out from somewhere else, or he put in something is wrong. I can't use it. So that was what I thought. So anyway, I also put it. I had articles on the web mentioning this. I also took them down. But at the time I was learning with Rabbi David. Rabbi David, he was teaching me. I was learning with him, and I asked him about this, and I told him what had happened. So he is probably in the whole of Israel. There are a few people, you probably count them on one hand, the people had this information. He said that the person who wrote that book put out 2 editions in the same year. And you should check the second edition. So I asked him to do it for me, and he did. And he gave me a photocopy of the page with his source written out in Hebrew, black on white, what we've just read. That the Hatam Sofer believed that England and Western Europe and other related areas in the future would be part of Israel. And this ties in with what we believe concerning the lost 10 tribes in the future. So getting back to what we're talking about. It says, the Almighty says that Ishmael will become a great nation, but the covenant is with Isaac. As we said, this is what has gone on with Abraham. And later on, God appeared to Abraham another time. He keeps on appearing to him. And Abraham has his name changed from Abraham to Abraham. And then he speaks of a covenant, and a great number of people will come from Abraham. A multitude of nations and kings will come from him. The land of Canaan will be given to Abraham. Every male needs to be circumcised. Sarai, the wife of Abraham, will have her name changed to Sarah. Nations of kings and kings of people will come from her. Ishmael, the son of Hagar, also become a great nation, but the covenant is to be with the son of Sarah, who when he is born is to be named Isaac. That's what the Bible tells us. In Genesis 17 it says, my covenant is with you, and you will be the father of a multitude of nations. And he will become a father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. Genesis 17. I'll make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings shall come forth with you. And then he is told to inherit the land of Canaan, and he is required to circumcise his flesh. Now, chapter 17, now when Abraham was 90 years old, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly. Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, my covenant is with you, and I will be the father of a multitude of nations, many peoples. No longer shall your name be called Abraham, but your name shall be Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and make nations of your king shall come forth with you. I will establish my covenant between me and your descendants after you, throughout the generations, for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. God said further to Abraham, as for you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout your generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and all your descendants, between you and your descendants. After you, every male among you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, shall be the sign of the covenant between me and you. Every male among you who is 8 days old shall be circumcised throughout your generations. A servant who is born in the house or is bought with money from any foreigner, it's not of your descendants, a servant who is born yet, shall surely be circumcised. A covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And he goes on. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarah, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and indeed I will give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said, "Son, will a child be born to men 100 years old?" That's how old he was. And Sarah was 90 years old, bare a child. And that is what we have here. Further on, remember that we saw that the covenant of circumcision followed the promise to inherit the land. Later we will see that inheriting the land, circumcision, and keeping the law are all bound up with each other. The other promises, however, are not necessarily contingent on keeping the law. In Genesis, the Almighty has repeated, the other promises are not necessarily contingent on keeping the law. And it says in Genesis 18, the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have chosen him, so that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what is spoken about him." So here it says again, Abraham will become a great and mighty nation. All the nations of the earth will be blessed in him. They will keep the way of the Lord, that is the descendants of Abraham, by doing justice, by doing righteousness and justice. Become a great and mighty nation, in order that all the nations of the earth be blessed in him. After that, chapter 22 describes how Abraham is commanded to take his son Isaac and offer him up as a sacrifice, and he does that, and he takes him and he lays him out on the altar, and he's about to kill him, and the angel comes down and stops him. And then God says to him, then in Genesis 22, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven, and he said, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing, you have not withheld your son, your only son. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens, as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of your enemies. In your seed will all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. By myself I have sworn, says God, as without conditions. From now on, the land is not mentioned. So the land continues to be contingent upon worshipping God. Dependent upon worshipping God. Worship God, keep the law, and keep the rite of a circumcision, and you can have the land. Do not do that, and you cannot have the land until the time comes. But other aspects of the blessing is you can have. They are irrevocable, irreversible, and have to be fulfilled, and they're part of the inherited task that the 10 tribes that Joseph has. Another point we should note of interest is that when the 10 tribes do return, 10 tribes will return. The Bible says it several times, and they have to return. Ezekiel also mentions it, chapter 37 and elsewhere. Most of the prophets mention it to some way or other. It says that when 10 tribes will return, at first they will inherit not the central body of the land of Israel, but areas on the periphery, Lebanon, Syria, Gilead, Bashan. It says in Zechariah 10, verse 7, those of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and the heart shall rejoice as with wine. Yes, their children shall sit and be glad. The heart shall rejoice in the Lord. I will whistle for them and gather them. For I will redeem them, and they shall increase as they once increased. I will sow them among the peoples, and they shall remember me in far countries. They shall live together with their children, and they shall return. I will bring them back from the land of Egypt and gather them from Assyria. These are areas they were exiled from at the beginning. I'll bring them to the land of Gilead. Gilead is what is now Jordan and Syria. And Lebanon. Lebanon is a land known as Lebanon today. So no more room is found for them. Micah 7 says, Micah 7, in that day I shall bring you, verse 12, Micah 7, verse 12, in that day they shall come to you from Assyria and the fortified cities, from the fortress to the river, from sea to sea, mountain to mountain. The land shall be desolate because of those that dwell in it. For the fruit of their deeds, shepherd your people with your staff, the flock of your heritage, who dwell solitary in the land, woodland. The midst of Carmel, let them feed in Bashan and Gilead, as in the days of old. In biblical times, Manasseh received an inheritance above the east and west sides of the Jordan River. East and west sides of the Jordan River. Machir and Gilead dominated the eastern side, that is, segments of Manasseh. Economically, at that time, is considered to have possibly been as important as the west, the whole of the west side of the Jordan. In that time, the climate was different. There were forests and immense grasslands and savanna. The land has now changed due to climatic change and ecological displacement. Foreigners took over the land and they let it, overexploited it, overgrazed it, they destroyed it, and they set in cycle a whole process of ruination. And the culprits include the Romans, the Turks, the Arabs. These people, they destroyed the trees, they destroyed the vegetation coverage. This causes the earth to heat up. It decreases precipitation, it's dew and rain. Creates a desert. But with enough will and effort, this process can be reversed. We can turn it back. And that's what the Israelites will do according to prophecy. See Ezekiel 16:55, 2 Chronicles 7:14. See Leviticus 26:42. It says, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember. And I will remember the land. The land will be healed. In the Bible, Ephraim will be greater than Manasseh. So this is the way it has been historically, but now the USA, representing Manasseh, actually are segments from all the tribes in the USA, also many from Ephraim. But Manasseh is dominant, so we may identify the USA as representing Manasseh. And there was indications in Scripture that this is what would happen, that Manasseh at a certain stage would become even greater than Ephraim was. Emek Davar, that is a Netziv, the commentary of the Netziv in Genesis 48:14, he analyzes the subject of Ephraim and Manasseh. And he notes that in their camping orders, Manasseh always precedes Ephraim. Manasseh always comes first. In tribal listings, Manasseh is usually considered first, counted first. And he says that the relative greatness of Ephraim was more spiritual. In the natural order of things, Manasseh would have precedence. He would go first. He would have the primary importance. And he also said that even though Ephraim was the chief standard, when the Israelites wandered in the wilderness, that is, when they wandered in the wilderness, the Israelites were moving in the wilderness according to their tribes. And the tribes were split up into 4 groups of 3. into 4 groups of 3, and the section of Joseph was in the west. It comprised the tribes of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And Ephraim was the leading tribe. And he says, the power of Ephraim is greater regarding the miraculous aspect of existence that was needed in the wilderness. Concerning the regular way of the world, Manasseh is greater. He also says, Numbers 13:11, that when they were coming into the land, Ephraim takes second place after Manasseh. See Numbers 13:11. Since they now needed to act according to the laws of nature, the main emphasis was now on Manasseh, he says. And he says in spiritual matters, Ephraim had precedence. In the ways of the world, Manasseh was preeminent. See Genesis 48:20 and that's it on that section where he explains it. And also says in Genesis 48:19 about Ephraim. Concerning Ephraim, it says his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Concerning Ephraim, the blessing of Ephraim, his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Ephraim shall become a multitude of nations. In Hebrew, it says Malach HaGoyim. And the Onkelos translates that as they will rule over nations. And Malach HaGoyim, according to different commentators, and also according to the Hebrew, it means the fullness of the nations. Meaning that many nations will need him, will come into existence because of him, and they will need his support. They will need him to maintain their existence. The existence of many peoples will be dependent upon Ephraim. His sons shall be rulers over peoples, according to Onkelos. Onkelos lived about 100 CE. He was related to Roman emperors such as Hadrian, and he converted to Judaism and he translated the Bible into Aramaic. And other commentators expand on this and strengthen the impression of it. And the Hebrew for this section, Genesis 48:19, can be translated or transliterated as saying his seed will be involved with the fullness of the nations. The nations will need him to complete themselves. They cannot give expression to themselves without him. He will rule over them. That is how the Hebrew may be understood. We also find that there would be a light to the Gentiles that would guide the Gentiles. See Isaiah 49, verses 5 to 13. Though Israel be not gathered to rise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel, I also give you for a light to the Gentiles, that you may be my salvation unto the end of the earth. The end of the earth is associated with the tribes of Jacob who need to be gathered, and indeed they are geographically, from a geographical perspective, that is where they are, at the ends of the earth. You look at a map, you have the British Isles, you have North America, you have the British Isles, you have Scandinavia, you have Netherlands, France, and then you have South Africa, and you have Australia, and you have New Zealand. And all those areas pertain to them, belong to them, and they are at the ends of the earth, they are at the geographical extremities. So that is where the Bible says those times will be. And there have been a civilizing influence amongst the nations. Modern Western concepts of human rights and innate dignity and so on are due more to them than to anybody else. To the extent that humanism and modern civilization is attributable to non-Anglo-Saxon elements, and these two are usually from nationalities identified as belonging to lost tribes, such as the Israelites, the French, the Scandinavians, the Swiss, the Dutch, and the Jews, the Anglo-Saxons. All of them together are responsible for most of the good that exists in the world today. Isaiah 49:5-13 says, continues, I will preserve you and keep you for a covenant of the people. That is a Brit-Am, a covenant of the peoples. To establish the earth, to cause to inherit the desolate heritages, saying, I say to the prisoners, go forth, behold, these shall come from afar. And these are these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of sin, for the Lord has conquered his peoples. It says, raise up the tribes of Jacob. It reminds us of the tribes of Jacob. The Jacob, in short, is Jack. We have the word yank. Yank is a Hebrew translation of a nickname for Jacob, Yankee, Yankel. And that is where the name Yank, which is a nickname for an American, may well come from. Also we have the Union Jack, flag of Britain. There's a covenant, Union means covenant of Jacob, so we're Britain. Jock for someone from Scotland. It's also short from Jacob. Yacht is also short from a Frenchman. And these all, or a good portion of them, belong to the 10 tribes of Israel. And we have Brit-Am. Brit-Am means a covenant of the people. It's similar, sounds reminiscent of Britain. Brit-Am, also Brit-Am in some places in the Middle Ages was sometimes written as Brit-Amia. So that is the same word. It's associated in Isaiah with the 10 tribes, Isaiah 49, also Isaiah 42. And we have Britain, the British Commonwealth, and the Union Jack. And we also have the USA modern Hebrew, USA, United States of America. It's known as Asor Brit, literally, translated literally, word for word, means the lands of the covenant. Asor Brit, that's what it's called in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew. So we see from this, that the blessings were divided, different aspects to them. Those aspects which were required for the 10 tribes to fulfill their task of reforming and rectifying and uplifting the Gentile nations of the earth remained. They were the blessings given without any condition being placed upon them by the very fact of their existence. That was their destined purpose in this world. Whereas other aspects of the blessing, such as dwelling in the land and other matters, were to be contingent on circumcising and keeping the law. And Judah has done that. Judah has kept the rites of circumcision. Judah has kept the law. And therefore Judah is now come back to the land. And Judah has a right to the land. And Judah has begun to take that right back. And he is preparing the way for the rest of the tribes. And the rest of the tribes in the future, at some stage in the future, they will also accept the law. And they will join, the two tribes will come together. So we're told in Ezekiel 37 and other throughout the Bible, the two tribe sections will come together. And once again, they will accept the Messiah, son of David, and they will accept the laws and keep them. And they will become one people. One people and no more two peoples. One people, one God, worshipping the Almighty. But they will remain separate in their tribal apportionments. You find in Ezekiel 49. So this is also worth keeping in mind. On to the second section of our talking and giving some of the more of the blessings in detail, just to give you an idea of what's going on. And this is what we have. Just a second. I need to get just a second here. Through Joseph was to receive a greater portion of the blessings from than all of the other tribes. And Joseph was blessed, promised, by the God of your father you shall keep you and help you, and by the Almighty who shall bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. These are blessings given to Israel. He says, you shall be blessed with blessings of heaven above, that is agricultural blessings. Blessings of the deep that lieth under. The deep, that is mineral resources, underground resources. Blessings of the breasts, that is general health, and of the womb, and fertility. Again in Deuteronomy 33:13 it says, and of Joseph he said, blessed be the Lord be his land for the precious things of heaven. For the Jew, it's agricultural blessings. And the deep that crouches beneath, mineral blessings. So if we want to find a place, we will see those blessings that they were given to the 10 tribes. They were given actually to all of Israel, but specifically allocated to the 10 tribes included. Being being very numerous on a world scale, having agricultural blessings on a world scale, having mineral resources on a world scale, being a mighty nation possessing a strategic thoroughfares and passes on a world scale on an internationally important strategically significant scale. And all of these blessings were fulfilled in the lost 10 tribes and many more. So we can go through each one and show each and every one has been fulfilled. For the moment, we'll just concentrate on the mineral blessings. And he says, again in 33:15, for the chief things of the ancient mountains and for the precious things of the everlasting hills. So that is mineral resources. Things you get out of the hills. You dig in the hills and that's what you find. And we find these in these nations that we identify as belong to those 10 tribes. The USA is the world's leading producer of natural gas. The USA is the second leading producer of chromium. Australia is the world leading producer of bauxite, iron ore, and lithium. Australia is the second leading producer of gold after China, manganese, zinc. Australia is the third leading producer of diamonds. Canada is the fifth. South Africa is the seventh. South Africa is the world leading producer of manganese, platinum. South Africa is the second leading producer of palladium. Canada is the second leading producer of niobium. These are present figures. In the past, the British Isles, Industrial Revolution. And before then, the British Isles supplied coal and tin and copper and gold. There was gold in Ireland and in other parts of the British Isles, and there probably still is. If someone is looking for a hobby, they might be able to make a little bit of money by going out there in the hills and digging down. Who knows? There should be some left. Because in the past there was a lot. Sweden was also important for oil, for its reserves of oil, and it still is. And we have, according to an article on the subject, that says the United States of America is a land with vast natural resources, including coal, copper, lead, uranium, molybdenum, denim, nickel, phosphate, silver, rare earth elements, bauxite, gold, iron, mercury, zinc, potash, tungsten, petroleum, natural gas. It's the world's largest gold reserves, about 475 billion tons, and accounts for about 27% of the total world reserve of coal. And the demand for minerals within the USA itself is very high. For example, its construction industry consumes nearly 51% of copper mined in the country. And it goes on. And how the USA is rich? For many reasons, including its mining industry, the technology, its advanced technology, its work ethics, and what it produces. And even the UK, it's not like it lags behind by a great degree, but it's also has something it contributes a lot to the world production. It's the third largest economy in Europe. It's the leading financial centre and trading power, and the UK the British Empire was occupied the place where the USA now occupies. America took over from Britain in a seamless way, and they both fulfill the same role. And you see the British Empire with its bases all over the world, and you see the Americans also have bases and outlets and stations and fueling points all over the world, like the British Empire had. All events. The UK also has mineral resources, as limestone, petroleum, coal, iron ore, lead, natural gas, tin, gold, slate, silica, land, potash, chalk, gypsum and clay. Natural gas, coal and production, petroleum also exist. And in addition to having their own resources, they control the resources of other countries. There's a point that I just noticed, that I just came across, concerning the USA and China. Now, the USA has a world as a currency. USA dollar is an international currency, and that is a blessing. And the USA, as its currency, and enables the USA to buy things without having to pay for them. Well, let me explain. You also had other currencies. So the EU, what they call it, the EU as a euro, and China has its currency, and Japan has a currency, and they all tried to take over from America, and they have artificial currencies. computer currencies, and you have currencies all over the place, and they're always trying to take over from America. None of them succeed, none of them can do it. Why? Because they lack the psychological disposition that enables the US dollar to continue to be the world leading currency. They lack the generosity of spirit that is needed for such a currency to kick into place and to maintain its position. And what happens when you have the dollar? You have a dollar. I have $3. $1, $2, $3. I have $1, $2, $3 in the bank. And I put out a check. I put out a check, $1, each check out for $1. Give it to one person and he takes it to the bank and cashes it in. I give it to another person and he takes it to the bank and cashes it in. I give it to a third person and he doesn't take it to the bank. Because my word is good. My word is good. My word is good amongst its suppliers, amongst the people he deals with. And my word is better than his word. So he prefers to take my check for $1 and to use it for currency, to give it to another trader. And that trader gives it to another trader, and they keep on passing it back and forth and never come and cash it. So as if that dollar that I had in the bank remains there. And you multiply this billions of times. And they can't do without it. It becomes more important than their own currency. So American can just quietly print a few more $1 billion here and there and get away with it. And the other countries see that America isn't producing so much, isn't working as hard as them, but it's still getting ahead and drives them crazy, but there's nothing they can do about it. Also we have the point that China relies, is trying to replace the USA. It's building bases all over the world. It's doing a lot of things trying to replace the USA. But China depends upon petroleum. It depends upon petroleum from the Middle East. And who makes sure that the petroleum gets there safely? The USA. China cannot do without the USA. It would be committing suicide to put the USA down. And this is part of the blessing that still is going on, the blessing of Abraham. And we have, these are just two examples. I can give you facts and figures and learned articles explaining it in detail and reservations and whatever you like. But that is in nitty-gritty and simple terms of what is going on. The USA is a leading country in the world because the Almighty has blessed it, because of its own psychology, which cannot be competed with. We should also note that a recent article that came to our attention from Amnon Goldberg. Amnon Goldberg, just a second, I'll look it up. Amnon Goldberg lives in Safat in the north of Israel, and he corresponds with us. And he himself, he writes, I believe he's a lawyer, he lives in Safat, he's an ultra-Orthodox Jew, and he writes numerous articles. He writes articles all over the place on all different subjects, including the Bible and science, history, and so on. And he, what the Asians knew, what the Asian people didn't know. Did they know that the earth was around all the time, and so on? And apart from that, he also wrote in defense of us, supporting us to different newspapers, and his articles of importance that can be found on the website. So amongst other things, he mentions that the land of Israel in potential is also a wealth bed of mineral resources. The Torah says, the Lord your God has bring you to a good land, a land with brooks of water, fountains and depths that merge in valleys and mountains, a land of wheat and barley, vines, figs and pomegranates, land producing olives and honey, a land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, will lack nothing in it, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose mountains you hew copper. And you will eat and be sated, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. In Deuteronomy chapter 8. Mark 1 in 1867, when he came to the land, he said, it's all desolate, there's nothing here, there's no one here. The Arabs had ruined it all. He says they were going to traverse miles of desolate country given wholly to weeds. A silent, mournful expanse, he describes the land of Israel that he saw. He came to the land of Israel and he went to Jerusalem, but he described the area he saw on the way, and he went in other parts of all over the country, different areas, parts of the country. Desolation is here that not even an action nation can grace with the pomp of life and action. Reached Tabor safely, but never saw a human being on the whole route. And he goes on, and that other writers and travelers also give a similar description. There were very few people here, and it only took the Jews, needed the Jews to come here and to build up the country. And when the Jews began to build up the country, Arabs came in from neighboring regions, from Syria, from all over the Ottoman Empire, to work, to live, and their population doubled and trebled, quadrupled, whatever. Doesn't really matter. They did not appreciate the land when they were here. They let it go to ruin, and the Jews came in and built it up. And he says that Eretz Israel now is producing more than it ever did in recent times. So leader in GMO and hydroponic technology, setting world record yields tons per acre, production of almonds, apple, apricot, artichoke, asparagus, avocado, banana, barley, bean, berry, broccoli, cabbage, cactus, carambola, cauliflower, cherry, chickpea, corn, cucumber, date, fig, grapefruit, guava, kiwi, kumquat, lemon, lychee, lamgo, melon, mushroom, onion, pea, peach, pear, pepper, parsimon, pineapple, plum, potato, pumpkin, quince, radish, squash, tomatoes, watermelon, wheat and wine, plus regular amounts of eggs, poultry and milk, etc. And that's what the Jews have done, because God has helped them, because the land is blessed with them. And also because it's up to date, state of the art processes, desalination plants. And the desalination plants enables it to, not a few years ago, there's a crisis in Israel. They didn't have enough water. Most of the water came from aquifers under the ground. And a lot of it was in was called Judah and Samaria, and the Arabs were polluting it. They still pollute it. And the problem about where to get drinking water from. So they built desalination plants along the coasts, and now they produce a lot of water. And they give away every year 50 million cubic meters to Jordan as a gift, just to keep them quiet. And they also have gas fields that are capable of supplying all of Europe for 100 years. It's off the coast. And they have a petroleum resource, oil, in the Golden Heights and other areas, and other blessings. They also have a drip irrigation that enables them to give only small amounts of water to growing plants that's enough to grow them to fruition. And this is making a revolution all over the world in desolated or semi-desolated areas. They are copying what Israel is doing. They're borrowing the technology. They're learning from Israel. Israel is leading is a leader in the field in all these aspects, in all these things. And this is what we have, God willing, and it will continue to expand. And not only the land of Israel, but also the other areas that Israelites settle in shall also continue to be prosperous. But at some stage or other, we will have to return. We have to recognize the Almighty. We have to know who He is and to obey Him. But for the meantime, what we have to do is to know who we are, to know that we belong to the lost 10 tribes of Israel, and that we have a task, a national task, a tribal task that's given to us. And this is what we have to do. And I could go on, and I could show you with the similar messages concerning the numbers, the vast numbers it was prophesied they would have, and they comprise 12% altogether, not altogether. 12, the nations that they live in, the nations that the lost 10 tribes live in some nations they are a minority, and others a majority. In some they are an important section, and others perhaps less, but they are there. But taking all these nations together, you get about 12% of the world's population. And these nations account for about 60% of the world's wealth. So that alone shows that on the world scale, they are fulfilling the blessings or receiving the blessings that were promised to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And future talks, we'll go into other matters concerning this subject. Lord God of Israel bless you. Thank you.